Let the meltdown begin. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network. I am Gabriel Morency. Let's do this thing. Double threat style as Joey Odessa will join me from Costa Rica in a couple of moments' time. We're going to crunch the numbers. It's UFC Fight Night 50 going head-to-head with Bellator. I keep thinking that this, this double header of mixed martial arts events is on Saturday, but it's on Friday night. A rare Friday night double header. And they're going, not only they're going head-to-head, but they're both in the state of Connecticut. Got some interesting fights across the board, both in the UFC and Bellator. We're going to crunch the numbers with Joey Odessa and Reed Kuhn from Fightnomics, the premier analyst when it comes to breaking down the analytics of mixed martial arts, will join us as we pick up the pieces following UFC 177. And, there was a lot of bitching last week, and I'll put my hand up. I was partial to it as well. But I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. You can't judge a card until you see the card. And I'm more concerned with whether I win on the card than who's actually on the card. I don't care if there's like 10 superstars on the card and I lose a couple of $1,000s. Then it wasn't very entertaining. It wasn't very fun, was it? But ultimately, you know what? It was a card. It is what it is. But it's unfortunate that it turned out to be what it was, because UFC 177 was already being criticized. That was before Barao had a medical issue. And, we see the interview on Saturday night with Barao in which he states he wouldn't change anything. Everything's fine. He's fought like this and he's cut his weight like this his entire career, and everything is okay. I haven't seen such blatant denial since the head of the Iraqi minister was stating, no, everything's okay. We fought off the American forces while Saddam Hussein's statue was tumbling behind him. Remember Baghdad Bob? No, it's good. We fought off the enemy. We won. We won the war. Well, evidently you didn't. And evidently everything isn't okay when you're falling in your bathtub and hitting your head and you're not able to fight for an opportunity to get your belt back. So when I hear this stuff, it just frustrates me when I hear the term medical issue. It's not a medical issue. It's an unprofessional issue. Is weight cutting awful? Yes. Could it be changed the way that they do it? Maybe. That should be up for debate. But everybody knows the rules going in, and you're screwing the company, you're screwing yourself, and most importantly, you're screwing the fans. So it's not a medical issue. It's an unprofessional issue. But, hey, it is what it is. Let's not live in the past. Let's forge forward here. Let's bring in Mr. Reed Kuhn. We often talk about the book here in Fightnomics. And we gave away a couple of copies. Here you go. Pulling the Jon Stewart here. We gave away a couple of copies a couple of weeks ago. We got a ton of feedback. We got a couple of more I think we can squeeze out of Mr. Reed Kuhn here. Congratulations to Yolo, and congratulations to AJ for getting the book. It's great stuff, great analytics right here. Let's bring in Reed Kuhn. Reed, it's always a pleasure. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm psyched for a Friday night card. It's actually kind of refreshing. After a pay-per-view card that was a little bit disappointing in terms of the talent, now we've got a stacked free card, so this is a good week. No,
we really do have a stacked free card, and Bellator sort of stacked their card with former UFC guys and at least name fighters with King Mo and LeVar Johnson and Congo, and they've got a decent main event with Kerr and with Freire. But let's take a look at this free card. It's amazing, as you stated, the Friday night. You can't just assume anything nowadays, huh, Reed? You got to look at the start times, man. They got cards at 5:30 in the morning now, Friday nights, head-to-head. You got to check the start time of these things, but it is refreshing. It's going to be a great night of fights on Friday night. Starting off with Jacare and Mousasi is the main event. On Friday, these two fighters fought, of course, against each other in 2006. Gegard won the fight with an up kick.
Well, yeah, and I think people will be forgetting that because it's been a long time, and these guys were Strike Force, and they've been all over the place. I think people are more familiar right now with Jacare Souza, and I think that's why he's become a 3-1 favorite. But Mousasi is no slouch. I mean, he's got great stand-up. He's, in terms of skill metrics, he's pretty good. And on paper, this is actually pretty close. It's back and forth. Now, I think Souza might be the more dangerous guy on the mat, but Mousasi should not be overlooked here. The odds are pretty steep, and I think it should be more even. So I think this is a really good main event. Whoever gets through this fight is definitely going to be making noise for a title shot.
Now, Mousasi's one of these guys, as you stated, the average UFC fight fan probably doesn't think very much of him. Oh, the guy that struggled to beat Latifi You know, like he's never really put it together, but before he was in the UFC, he was one of these trendy type of guys. You know, the hardcore MMA fans are always saying, this guy is one of the best fighters in the world. And he's shown flashes of that, but he hasn't shown, like, he hasn't really put everything together at once. When you look at him, like, you know, from a numbers standpoint, how does Mousasi rank up? He's a weird fighter to get a grip on, this guy.
Yeah, I agree. His performance today so far has just been somewhat underwhelming. You mentioned the 5-rounder with Latifi. I mean, that was kind of painful to watch. He basically just out-jabbed the guy. I mean, he had an enormous reach advantage, and so he just played it safe and picked the guy apart. But then we saw him look fantastic against Mark Munoz, but it's not that hard to say. Mark Munoz maybe is on his way out. So a lot of these fight performances, people qualify them. And so we haven't seen the superstar guy that was fighting in Japan that had everybody buzzing before he got to the UFC. So on paper, even with the amount of data that I have, it's actually pretty good if we include all of his Strikeforce stats. He's been a pretty efficient guy. He tends to outwork people. His striking elusiveness is actually very good. He doesn't get hit a lot. He's able to maintain cage control and pick people apart. His ground game, I think, is the one area where hit or miss, he might have a hole there. And Souza, I think, could exploit that, but he's going to have to be pretty aggressive closing distance and getting this to the mat. And I don't know how that will go. I do think this is much closer on paper than the odds, and I think it's kind of a chess match. I mean, this is going to be a really interesting main event.
Unfortunately, we only have 2 minutes already left here. I agree with you as far as the number is concerned. I think it's too high. Maybe if it was in Brazil, and even then, I think it's a little bit too high. You know, the public reality, the perception of Jacare might be a little. They might say he's a little better than he actually is. Overeem, 5-1 favorite against Rothwell here. Seems like a good matchup for Overeem.
Yeah, this is a perfect pairing because Rothwell is kind of a sloppy blue-collar guy. He can take a beating and keep coming forward. And they just took Alistair Overeem is the most accurate stand-up striker on this entire card, and he's facing the guy, Ben Rothwell, with the worst strike defense. So this is going to be pretty brutal. Overeem is going to pick apart Rothwell and beat him up badly. The problem is Rothwell, he is one counterpunch away from a massive upset because we've seen Overeem look great and then fade at the end and just get clipped. We've seen it a couple times now, and Rothwell is exactly that kind of guy. So each one plays perfectly into the other one's weakness. So it'll be interesting to see which one happens. And obviously Overeem has the advantages here. He should just outstrike Rothwell, keep it standing. Although Overeem's no slouch on the ground, he could probably take it down if he wants to. I think he picks Rothwell apart, and he just has to be really careful about not getting countered.
Yeah, you know, it sucks. We got to wrap it up already. But you know who Overeem is? He's the Denver Broncos, Reed. You know, like run the table to the Super Bowl and lose. Because Overeem, he's lost a couple of fights, but you can't really say he's doing anything wrong. He gets knocked out. He's killing the guy with carbon copies. You know, Bigfoot Silva, he kind of got cocky and a little sloppy. And then against Travis Brown, the same thing. And there's always that danger. And Rothwell, as you mentioned, can really, really, really take a beating. Hey, Reed, it's amazing how time flies when you join us. Always a pleasure, man. Fightnomics.com. We're going to give away a couple of more of these books. It's great stuff. Check them out. Follow them on Twitter. It's always a pleasure, Reed.
And for me, too. Enjoy the busy weekend.
Hey, it's always a pleasure breaking it out with Reed Kuhn, and it's always great bringing in Joey Odessa. Joey Odessa will join me next. MMA Meltdown continues.